Hello and welcome to another episode of the EA Show. Now exploring arguments. Thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. Very excited for the show tonight. It's gonna be a big show. We have a review of a discussion that happened the other day with our brothers over at Thought Adventure Podcast, and they had a special guest, AronRa, on, who is a very big personality within the atheist world. I was one of his biggest fans at one point in time, until I saw the light, came to the truth, and alhamdulillah, I was able to leave that line of thinking. But with me tonight, I have Brother Hanif and Brother Muhammad Yunus. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good. Assalamu alaikum. Hi, everybody.
Good. Walaikum salam.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody in the chat that's hanging out and talking to us in the chat. We appreciate your participation. If this is your first time here, consider hitting the like and subscribe button for more content. We'll be pushing out more debate reviews, discussions. Saturday, we're going to be having our first call-in show. Brother Hanif and Brother Yunus is going to be there with us, taking calls from anybody that like to call in and talk to us about whatever they'd like to talk to us about. Typically, we have a subject that we speak about, and you can call in and have a conversation with us about that subject. But with that being said, we're going to be doing the review of the discussion. I'm going to be playing it at slightly a higher speed. And whenever one of the brothers or myself would like to pause and add some commentary to the discussion, we will go ahead and do so. Yes, Prophet of John, alhamdulillah, I am a Muslim now. So yeah, Prophet of John, he's an old buddy of mine. But yeah, let's go ahead and bring up the video and get started. Whenever one of you brothers would like me to pause, just let me know. I'll pause the video and you can add your commentary in.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for joining us once again in the Thought Adventure podcast. Today, we have a very special episode where we'll be talking to our guest here, AronRa, about whether a necessary being exists. Aaron is an extremely well-known atheist. He's an activist. He's a podcaster. He has a YouTube channel where he discusses a lot of topics about religion, philosophy, atheism, science, and we're hoping this is going to be a good discussion. Good to have you here, Aaron.
Thank you much.
And to the panelists, assalamu alaikum. How's it going?
Wa alaikum salam.
Now, Aaron, maybe you can give us like a brief intro about yourself, what you do, your views, and then we can get right into it.
Well, I'm a secular advocate. I'm an activist advocating for science, secular science and education, and also secular policies in politics, which, of course, in the United States of late has been quite a challenge.
Cool. Okay, so this discussion is titled, Does a Necessary Being Exist? And of course, we know it's highly unlikely that, Aaron's going to come out of this discussion believing in God, or that Jake, Sharif, or I will get convinced in the opposite direction. But in order for this discussion to be as intellectually fruitful as possible, we need to structure it in a way where we can lay out, our views on the table, define our terms, and try to understand our respective epistemic frameworks and deconstruct the opposing views from there, so that we can actually try to get somewhere. So I guess, that is a difficult goal to achieve. But if we go about it in the right way, and if we sort of address the right questions and the foundations of this discussion, keeping in mind that we are coming from different frameworks, different epistemic frameworks, different worldviews, we need to try to come to as much common ground as possible, so that we can move forward with the discussion in an intellectually meaningful manner. So I guess we can start by asking Aaron some questions, and I prepared some questions here so that I can try to achieve that goal. We can try to achieve that goal in the stream to the best of our ability. So I first want to ask Aaron about his views. Well, is he a hard atheist, a soft atheist, agnostic, something else?
All right. Well, for the longest time, it was agnostic, in that I didn't have a belief in God, and the belief, and I left open maybe the possibility. But now I understand that there's not even a possibility, literally. And so And all we have is evidence that God has been made up. So my belief in God is now about the same as your belief in leprechauns. It's not just that they don't exist, but they can't exist.
So can we pause there for a moment? So yeah. So what I want to say is that like the claim that Aaron makes here is a positive claim that, you know, since he's an empiricist, yeah. So the claim he has made that there is no possibility for God to exist is a positive claim, yeah. And his epistemology or his worldview needs some justification, empirical justification for this claim, yeah. Since empiricism is about matter, right? Is about physical processes and matter. So he would have to bring on the table the empirical justification that for the claim that he has made right now. So let's see in the future, yeah, how he kind of tackles this question, or whether he's able to bring some empirical evidence for the claim that God doesn't exist or there is no possibility for God to exist. Yeah. So it's a kind of knowledge claim that Aaron has just made, and it would need some justification. Yeah. Empirical justification, since he's an empiricist. Yeah.
What we shouldn't expect to see is him make a claim like, I know that God does not exist, it's impossible. What we don't want to see or shouldn't see is backtracking to an agnostic position.
Yeah, that's the reason I pointed it out in the very beginning, because, like, you know, I know how he's going to approach the discussion. Yeah, he's going to bring science and matter and physical evidence, yeah, to the table and ask the brothers to bring about some concrete physical evidences for the existence of God. Yeah. So for him to make a positive claim, yeah, he has to do the same. Yeah, the standard applies to him exactly in the same manner. So if he is making a positive claim, then his epistemology, which is scientism or empiricism, well, we would want to have some empirical evidence for there not being any God. Yeah. So let's see how he kind of, if he's able to bring down the table or not. Yeah.
Brother Hanif, you want to add anything?
Nothing really further than what Yunus said. Simply that we need to pin that down, that he's claiming that God does not exist.
Okay.
That's the positive claim he's making right from the onset, and we just want to make sure that everyone is aware of that claim he's making.
Yeah. That's precisely the reason I pointed it out in the very beginning, because like I'm like, you know, pretty sure that there would be some atheists watching us. Yeah, they would need to know what it means to make a positive claim for an empiricist. Yeah, and for yeah, go ahead.
I ruffled a couple feathers on Facebook by posting this video. So there are definitely atheists in here watching. They may not be in the chat, I'm not sure, but I do know that they're sitting here watching. And tonight we're going to expose AronRa as philosophically illiterate.
Yeah.
And respectfully, but
respectfully,
but we're gonna be blunt about it. At least I am. I'm gonna be blunt in showing how he has not a single clue on what he's talking about.
Of course, I mean, to refute the falsehood, we'll have to be blunt, yeah. But like, we'll have to do it in a very respectful manner, since like we're Muslims, right? And our Islam, our religion, you know, tells us to behave good, even if there isn't disagreement. Yeah, we need to act generously. Yeah. So yeah, we'll be good. We'll try to sort of pinpoint the errors that Aaron has in his epistemology or in his worldview, and how he kind of misrepresents the theistic worldview, and how sort of unsophisticated, yeah, he is in terms of philosophy or these philosophical arguments for the existence of God. Yeah, that's what we're going to do in this.
Marcus the Unitarian, yes. When Aaron says that he knows that God does not exist, that it's physically impossible, then that would apply a burden of proof. And that's why we're saying we don't want to see him fall back into an agnostic position to where he says, I just don't believe.
Yeah.
As a hard atheist, and this is generally with regard to like the proposition for, if I give you a proposition, a necessary being exists, are you saying that you are, you believe that that proposition is outright false?
Right. There's no such thing as a necessary being. The better question is, is God really necessary?
That's important.
So can we pause it there?
There is no such thing as a necessary being.
All right. So I like to bring some points, shed some light on some points. Yeah. So the point of the discussion between Aaron and the Muslim brothers is that whether a necessary being exists or not. Yeah. Since it's outright a philosophical topic, to discuss. There is no science. There is no science involved in the topic. Yeah. So, so for you, it's important for you to understand what a necessary or possible existence means. So, Hanif, would you wanna say something about it? Like, what does it mean to be a possible, impossible, and necessary existence? Like contingent facts, necessary facts. It's important for the audience to know that.
Okay, from my understanding, a necessary being is that which cannot not exist, that has to exist. There's a phraseology used in philosophy which is called possible world semantics. They have these possible states of affairs which are called worlds, and a necessary being is a being that would exist in all possible worlds and therefore is necessary.
Yeah, in simple terms, yeah.
Something would be possible if it could or could not exist.
Could not exist, yeah.
And by being, we shouldn't be misled into thinking by being we mean something which is personal right off the bat.
Yeah.
When the term being is used, what we mean is a thing or an existent thing. Yeah. Whether or not it has a mind, a will, or is it, or it doesn't. Yeah. Sorry, am I getting an echo on?
I'm hearing a little bit of background noise.
Okay, sorry. Is
that
better?
That's better.
Yeah, this is better. Yeah. So I want to say this, we in philosophy categorize existence into three different parts. Yeah, one is impossible existence, the existence which is impossible to exist. Like for instance, we got the mathematical sort of 2 + 1 couldn't equal 4. Yeah, this is impossible for 2 + 1 equaling 4. Yeah. That's something we call impossible existence. Yeah. Then we have got possible existence. Possible existence is that which could have or could have not been. Let's take an example of this phone. Yeah, the phone that I'm using right now. Now it is possible for this phone to not have existed. Yeah. Now the existence of this phone, yeah, has an explanation outside of its existence. Yeah, like the manufacturer making it, me buying it, and then talking to you. Yeah, so this makes up an explanation for the existence of this phone. Yeah, so this is what we call as possible existence, that which could have or could have not exist. And then we go a necessary existence, that which it is impossible for it to not have existed. It has to exist.
Couldn't have been another way.
It could have not been otherwise. So I mean, it's important for you to know the difference between different kinds of existence. Yeah. Shall we move on?
All right.
Necessary, and I don't even think that's a valid question. There's no indication of God. There's no possibility of God. It's just something we made up to feel comfortable somehow.
Well, okay, since this discussion revolves around our knowledge of this specific proposition I'm putting forward here, let me ask you about your epistemology. So in your view, what are the acceptable methods out there that we possess as humans in order to come to know anything? Must it be observable? Can we infer things about the unobservable? What's your epistemology? How do you come to know things? That's going to help us know how you've come to know that this proposition is false.
Well, a lot of people will think that because they believe something is the same thing as knowing it, and I call that the fourth foundational falsehood of creationism. You can't demonstrate the accuracy of your claims to any degree at all, by any means whatsoever, then you can't actually know what you merely believe. So you have to be able to show that there's some truth to it. And if you can't show that there's a truth to it, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's false. It just means there's no truth you can show for it. And so you could leave open the possibility if there is a possibility to consider, but don't allow yourself.
Can we pause there?
Pause there. It might be a bit more useful if we Slowed it to 1.25. I'm finding it difficult to keep track of what he's saying.
Okay. Was that all you guys wanted? Was just slow it down?
Yeah, I think I go where he was trying to say. So the brother Abdul Rahman is trying to ask him that, like, what theory of knowledge, he uses to understand the nature of reality, or to get to know the truth. So I mean, every one of us wants to know the truth. Now it depends upon the kind of the theory of knowledge that we use to pursue for that truth. So the question to Aaron is being asked is like, what kind of theory of knowledge Aaron uses to understand the nature of reality, or to understand the truth. So I'm sure he's going to refer to something that's known as empirical, sort of demonstrative, verifiable, testable evidence. So we're going to talk about it like in the future. So can we play on and let's see what he has to say about it?
Yeah, but I guess, Aaron, my question was more along the lines of how do we come to the conclusion that something is real or not, provided we both think that we're approaching this from like an evidentialist, we have an evidentialist approach to this, that we believe we need to have reasons and we need to show that our beliefs are true. So what I'm asking you is, what is the epistemological framework you're committed to in, determining whether something is true or not?
What I just said. I mean, if you want to make a claim, okay, I don't care what you believe. All I care is why you believe it. So show me the facts and evidence that imply that indicate that is at least a possibility, and at least it should be a probability. So show me that.
But how can I show it to you when you're not giving me a mean? So I agree with you in one sense that I need to show you.
If you pause there,
I do with evidence, or I need to show you.
Okay. You can see from Aaron's reply that he's merely repeating Abdul Rahman's request. He doesn't understand what Abdul Rahman was asking. Abdul Rahman was saying, we both accept this framework. Okay, you believe something, you should be able to justify your belief in some way, either from some evidence, some reasoning. And he's asking Aaron for the framework that he uses, like what sorts of reasonings does he accept to justify his beliefs. And Aaron just simply says exactly the same thing back to him. He says, you're telling me you believe something. I want to know why you believe it. He's not responded to the question, which immediately puts me into thinking, makes me doubt whether he's understanding what is being put to him. And he's not. It doesn't seem like he's engaging with Abdurrahman.
Yeah, they're starting off by trying to figure out what his epistemology is.
Exactly, that was what I was going to say. Exactly.
And AronRa just simply wants to go show me the evidence.
and also the important thing is that epistemology is a big branch of philosophy. Philosophy wouldn't exist without epistemology. So I mean, this is kind of philosophical discourse. It's not something we are having a testable sort of scientific discourse here. It's purely a philosophical discourse, and the question asked is about epistemology, which is a big branch in philosophy. So you guys need to
another important thing to know is that science wouldn't exist without epistemology.
Science is in fact an epistemology. It's an empirical epistemology. Absolutely. So I mean, for the viewers too, I mean, this is what you need to understand, is that like epistemology is not science. Science is an epistemology, right? So, and epistemology is a big branch in philosophy. So whenever you try to like have a discussion with a theist, remember this, it's not going to be a scientific discourse. It's not going to be a discourse that you can put under a microscope and start testing it, right? It's a discussion about divine. It's a discussion about the creator who created this entire cosmos, right? So that is going to be a philosophical discussion which you need to understand, because a lot of time when you speak to these internet atheists, and this is like, it's just their prime kind of sentence, bring us an evidence, a verifiable, scientific, testable, empirical evidence. But what they fail to understand is that God is not an empirical thing. So you can't approach God, divine, with an empirical epistemology. You just have to get out of this bubble which you have contracted yourself in, and think broadly, have a sort of broad discussion, philosophical discussion on the existence of God, then you can have some sort of an agreement with any philosophical theist out there. Otherwise, like, it's just going to be a back and forth. There's going to be a fight. There's going to be a name calling and stuff like that, but without actually getting to somewhere. So I just want to point that out in the very beginning.
You that a certain belief that I have is more likely to be true than not. But then what I'm asking for is what you regard as evidence, what you regard as justifiable reasons to regard such a belief as true.
Because you're asking for a definition of evidence. A body of objectively
basically
verifiable facts that are positively indicative of and or exclusively concordant with one available position or hypothesis over any other.
How are you defining facts here?
I just said objectively verifiable data.
No, but you said objectively verifiable facts, but you didn't really
it's
define.
It's a bit redundant because people don't understand. The reason I say that is because people don't understand that the word fact is already objectively verifiable data. So it's not a fact just because you say it's a fact. It's a fact when we can show that it's a fact.
Is the law of non-contradiction a fact?
I don't know if that qualifies as a fact. We put this together. We analyze the universe in properties of it, and we try to work out.
Can we pause there for a moment? Hanif, do you want to say something?
He won't.
No, you go ahead for a sec. I'm just formulating my thoughts.
All right. So the question that's being asked to Aaron is like, whether the law of non-contradiction is a fact. Yeah. And he what did he say? He said he doesn't know, right? Yeah. So now this is something, which you need to understand. Yeah. The laws of logic are primary, to any pursuit of knowledge. You can't have knowledge without having the laws of logic. Yeah, and there are these three laws which are the foundations for like any epistemology, right? Any knowledge out there in the world. Yeah. So I mean, you can't even have science without having the laws of logic. Yeah. So laws of logic is that, like, you understand that the world out there has a pattern, yeah, and your mind can understand those patterns. Yeah, you have a reliable, sound, truth-bearing faculty, yeah, which is a priori. You can't really test your laws of logic, correct? So it is a priori in a sense that you first have to have laws of logic, and then you can go out there in the world and start doing science, or start conducting any verification or any scientific investigation. Yeah. So laws of logic are fundamental to any knowledge, yeah, which we attempt to gain through science or through any other means. Yeah. So to say that laws of logic aren't factual is like saying that we can't really have knowledge about anything, be it science or be it any other rational investigation. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. What I want to say is, his comment shows he's philosophically naive.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's philosophically naive. He seems to limit factual facts to empirical facts of the world. So would he discount mathematical truths as being facts? And as Brother Yunus was saying, if you are searching in the empirical world to find out whether the laws of logic apply, such as the law of non-contradiction, which is that a thing cannot be A and not A at the same time. A thing cannot be and not be at the same time. Then you can't find empirical verification for that law without first presuming the law in the first place. That the very notion of rational thinking presupposes and requires these laws of logic to operate.
Yeah. This is the moment that I believe that Aaron realized he done messed up and showed up to the wrong show, and he's about to have his clock cleaned. That's what I'm seeing off of the. I'm watching not only the things that he's saying, but I'm watching his body language too, and I'm seeing that he's. This is the point to where I saw where he started to get extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah. Of course, I mean, if you're going to make these blanket statements without knowing what you're talking about, then, I mean, it's just, like I earlier said, it's being unsophisticated. I don't want to use that word my friend used. It's being philosophically illiterate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah.
All right, let's continue.
When we summarize by a mathematical equation or a summary statement what we think the properties of the universe are, we have gotten them wrong before. So it's our best estimation.
Yeah. So the statement something X cannot be both X and not X at the same time in the same way. That's not a fact about reality.
I would say that I'm certainly going to adhere to that. But if it's something that we worked out about the universe, again, it's up to human foibles. I'm going to say that to the extent of our knowledge, no, you can't be something and both not be that something.
Okay, so I mean, I guess because for you, I know you appreciate science, right? And you value science a lot, right? And the idea here is that science is based on certain logical frameworks and philosophical presuppositions. And the discussion about what, philosophical underpinnings, the discussion about what evidence is really a philosophical discussion. It's because you don't have any experiment to answer that question. You don't have any, you can't take me to a lab and show me under a microscope what evidence is. You need to define it first in order to regard whatever you're going to show me as evidence. Okay. So you need to have a certain epistemic framework prior to your scientific investigation in order to regard
pause there?
Evidence.
Okay.
This is what I was talking about earlier, right? You would have to have the laws of rationality before you even start doing any sort of scientific investigation. Yeah. So these are a priori principles for you to, I mean, pursue any knowledge, yeah, be it scientific knowledge or be it like testimonial knowledge or other epistemologies are out there, right? So laws of logic doesn't have any scientific empirical basis, yet we base all our science, yeah, on these laws, yeah, laws of rationality. So yeah, go on.
Anything to add, Hanif?
Yeah. So one of the presuppositions you have in science is, for instance, that nature behaves uniformly over time, and in all parts of the universe. So if a researcher is going to conduct a scientific experiment, and part of that, the scientific procedure is to be able to repeat that experiment, he's going to have to assume that the laws of physics themselves do not change from one reference frame to another. So that's already a presupposition.
Yeah.
If, for instance, imagine a universe in which the laws of physics changed randomly. Could science occur? Could you,
or even
carry out
any knowledge,
or any knowledge? Yeah, you couldn't. It couldn't be done. So we come with already a presupposition and an assumption that the reality of the world is uniform, and we can test it. And when we test it, it will give the same data back if we change the same variables.
Yeah. And yeah, to clear this up, what he means by uniformity is that we have got the law of gravity. Yeah, we believe that the law of gravity is going to behave in the same manner tomorrow as it behaves right now. So this is the kind of uniformity we sort of presuppose in nature. Yeah, we believe that the future is going to resemble the past. Yeah, that is already a presupposition, even in science. Without it, it would just be random, and randomness, having randomness, doing science is impossible, right? So yeah, I mean, science in and of itself starts off with certain presuppositions. Yeah, and one of the important presupposition is that uniformity of nature, that the future, tomorrow, which we haven't observed yet. Yeah, we haven't entered into tomorrow yet. Yeah, but we presuppose that tomorrow the law of gravity is going to act in the same manner as it did in the past, right? Now, this is not a scientific observation. We haven't entered into the future to observe whether it is going to be the case or not, right? But we already have this presupposition in the scientific methodology itself. So yeah.
Perfect.
So it's a philosophical exercise. So I guess what I'm asking, the reason I'm asking you what a fact is because we might disagree on that too. So you're saying an objectively verifiable fact, and I'm asking if you're
verifiable data.
A fact is objectively verifiable data. So the laws of the law of non-contradiction, for example, the laws of logic, mathematics, and the philosophical underpinnings of science, these are not facts.
We can take mathematics to be fact.
Okay. So your view
would you
about
take,
these...
really quickly, would you take the law of non-contradiction as a data point? Is that how we came to the conclusion, or how you came to the conclusion about, the law of non-contradiction?
I'm not sure about the question.
So I'm saying this is either we use logical axioms in order to interpret the data, which basically means it comes prior to the observation.
Can we put a pause there?
Saying that the logical axioms or these logical principles come.
Absolutely.
Now the thing here is that Aaron says that he doesn't understand the question, and if you're going to have a philosophical discussion, I mean, these are very basic questions.
Yeah.
One needs to know in order to even enter into a philosophical discourse. Yeah. To even say that he doesn't understand the question, like the laws of logic being the data point. It's just it's kind of show that how unsophisticated AronRa is for these theological discussions or these philosophical discussions. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. That's a very important part, and that's like the crux of the whole matter with this discussion with Aaron, is that because we are trying to ask him questions that he feels are completely irrelevant, that shows the ignorance. I guess that's the best way to put it. The ignorance in his understanding on how facts work. Now, he calls himself a skeptic. Now, when you're a skeptic, I would assume that you would look at your own views and use all different methods and methodologies to try and investigate even your own belief system to see if it's contradictory within itself. Hence why I'm no longer an atheist. I did exactly that. If you're going to consider yourself a skeptic, why are you completely throwing philosophy out the window while still using philosophy only in empirical means?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, he has made it synonymous, ignorance with skepticism. It's not synonymous, yeah. So, I mean, that's the irony, bro. I mean, if you don't understand these basic questions and then you claim to like kind of liberate the world from the religion or from philosophy, then I'm sorry. And I feel so sorry for the people who follow you.
Mm-hmm. Anything, Hanif?
No, you said it brilliantly.
All right, let's do it.
After our observation of the universe. So I'm saying the law of non-contradiction, which you agreed is generally what you accept. Does it come through data, the observation?
Verifiable? So my question about it being a fact is whether it's objectively verifiable. I would assume that I'm happy to assume that it's true, but I don't know how we would verify that. I think we just have to assume that it's true.
So
there you go.
You'll only believe
Hold on a second.
Demonstrable from the point of view of...
Yeah. So what his statement basically implies is that all the science that we consider to be factual and all the science that we rely upon, which is based on the laws of logic and the reliability of our rational faculties, I mean, is not reliable, because he is saying that he assumes that maybe the laws of logic are true, but he's not sure about them. How on earth, you can even make any factual statements, which is fundamentally based on these laws of rationalities, these truth-bearing faculties, So, I mean, what can you say? I mean,
The other thing I'd say is, you see him let on part of his epistemology here. He's applying a verification principle. He's saying, okay, let's assume that the law of non-contradiction is true, but I don't know how we go about verifying it. I prove that it's true, but that's actually a discredited scientific epistemology dating back to, I think, around the 1950s with the Vienna Circle, so-called Vienna Circle. They said to hold any truth statement, you had to be able to verify it positively, make it. But modern science has abandoned that principle, and they follow the idea of falsification. That
the reason
scientific theories are posited to explain data, facts, say similarities in species, and then those theories are they look to see if you can falsify those theories, and if the theory can be falsified, then it's rejected and has to be replaced by a better theory. That's the scientific paradigm where we operate in at the moment. If he's actually believes science is his model of getting knowledge of the world, he's using a pretty old-fashioned version of it, or he's being
and
he's double standard. He has a double standard here.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, to say that science can lead us to the truth, I mean, that very statement, is not scientific. It is in and of itself a philosophical statement, right? You can't verify this statement under a microscope. So do you understand, like, the kind of, the error that Aaron makes here, that, science can lead up to the truth, and that is the only way we can understand the truth in an ultimate sense, So, I mean, that statement in of itself is unverifiable. You can't put that statement in a microscope and test that statement, So it kind of backfires. It kind of backfires very, very, very badly to the empiricist, like that of AronRa. Honey, if you want to say something.
Empirically demonstrable. It's not empirical.
I think we should move on now.
All right.
Empirically demonstrable, then you can't justify it as a fact or an evidence.
I can believe that something is likely to be the case, because when I say I believe something, I think I mean something different than when a believer says that. If I say that I believe something, I mean that this is what I suspect to be true or closest to the truth, but that I don't know it is because I can't show that it is. Whereas a believer will simply say that you express their belief as knowledge and say that they know that it is because they believe that it is.
Yeah, I don't think either any of us here believe that, we should believe in something just because we claim we believe in it, and that's simply enough. I think the issue is this, is that when we seek to analyze this question about a necessary being, and obviously you hold on to the hard atheist position that there is definitely no necessary being, the question then becomes, okay, we've got this
body. Why would
body.
it be necessary?
What do you mean, why would it be necessary?
Why would it be necessary?
So do you know what a necessary being would be? What that refers to?
No, I'm asking you.
Okay, so necessary being means that which exists and couldn't be any other way. So when we talk about a necessary being, we're saying that there's something that exists as a foundation to reality that has to be and couldn't be any other particular way, which is contrasted to something which we call a possible or contingent being. Are you aware of these terms?
Yeah, I've heard them before. They're just nonsense.
Can I pause it? Now, see what's happening here. You guys see what's happening here. Brother Sharif is trying to explain to him that, he asked him a question that whether he knows what a necessary being means, Then he explains it to him and then asks him whether he understands, and he says, oh, he has heard it, but it's nonsense. Without, I mean, what can you say to something like this? It's just ridiculous, man.
So if you saw beforehand, there was like a 5-second pause to where he was figuring out what he was going to say, and he just had nothing. And then he was like, exactly. Well, yeah, I've heard it, but that's nonsense.
That's the thing, brother. I mean, AronRa is a kind of a person, who's been in the field, advocating for atheism for like more than a decade now. I was a little kid back then when I used to watch AronRa. And this guy doesn't even understand the basics, the very basics. Even a second grade philosophical student, philosophy student would understand what contingence means, or impossible existence, and what necessary existence means. And here you go, and AronRa, was followed by millions of people millions, because why I say millions, because like he has got millions of views on his videos on YouTube, yeah, and he doesn't even understand these
subscribers.
Exactly, and he doesn't understand these basic terms. Yeah, I mean, I don't feel bad for him. I feel bad for the people who follow him blindly without critically thinking about it.
The other thing I'd like to say, it seems that he's not able even to have the imagination to entertain the hypothetical. Okay, what if there is a necessary being? He can't entertain the concept of a necessary being. He straight away he goes to, okay, why is a necessary being necessary? Okay, one can investigate that and discuss what makes a necessary being necessary, but Sharif was bringing up the point that, okay, the possibility of a necessary being, the actual, is it, what does it mean to be necessary? He doesn't even understand that that's an actual possible thing that one can have a discussion about.
Absolutely.
And that's the premise of that was the title of the discussion he entered into. So I think what I think this shows is arrogance on his part. He was invited onto the show. He knew what the title of the show was, the topic would be, and right from the onset, he's just dismissing it, and he's using his standard one-liners, as it were. He's memorized his spiel. Okay, give me your evidence. Give me your evidence. Otherwise, I'll dismiss it.
Yeah, he doesn't even understand what evidence means.
Yeah. So you see, what the brothers, the Tap brothers, were trying to do. Abdurrahman acknowledged at the start that it was unlikely that any of them would be able to change their position. Okay, but at least they can. Each of them should be willing to engage in a conversation, a dialogue, and understand the other side properly. And at the moment, call me biased, I am a Muslim, but it doesn't seem as if Aaron is willing to engage in the discussion.
Yeah.
So what I think is happening is that there is, for some reason, this distinction between science and being part of atheism, and philosophy being strictly exclusive to religion, as if you're an atheist, you have to exclude philosophy from your frame of thinking, because that's what the theists use. That's what the Christians and the Muslim use. They use philosophy to try and reason. And us over here on the atheist side, we're all about show me the facts, show me the data. So we're all about the scientific method. And for some reason, there's this divide that's happening between people, to where for some reason philosophy just falls in with theism, and empirical data and scientific method falls in with atheism. I don't think it should be that way, but I think that
No.
Aaron is trying to push for this.
The point here is, I mean, even if you say that philosophy is something that theists use, I mean, that very statement isn't a scientific statement. Yeah, it is a philosophical statement.
Yeah.
So you can't really escape philosophy. Philosophy is fundamental to even everything. Like, let's say, I mean, we're in home, having an argument with our wives, or like, with our children, right? We're doing philosophy there, right? Mm-hmm. So philosophy isn't something, we just theists use. Philosophy is just all over. You can't really escape philosophy. I mean, there is a book. There are so many books out there who discusses these issues and how philosophy is inescapable. So I would recommend. Yeah. Go on.
So what I feel is happening is the following, which is that AronRa is suffering from a fundamental category mistake. A category mistake is like asking what the smell of the color blue is. The color blue doesn't smell of anything. It's irrelevant. Now, science is the method by which we have rigorous empirical study of the physical world, and the physical world is the world of matter and energy. Okay, that's what current science says, and that's what AronRa believes. It's this disciplined study of it. If we're saying this discussion is about a necessary being, and which we believe is God, no theist believes God is a being made of matter and energy that is testable under a microscope, or you could observe him with a telescope, or you could bring him with a laboratory and experiment on him. It's a ludicrous assumption. One has to leave the field of science and move into another field, and the rightful field, which discusses whether there are things such there is a necessary being, or what is a necessary being, what is a contingent being, and whether a God would exist, is philosophy. It's a legitimate field. It's a legitimate field of study, which online atheists want to delegitimize when they fail to recognize it's actually the foundational science, foundational study of the whole of Western civilization, going all the way back to Socrates and Plato. These atheists are supposed to be the inheritors of that tradition of philosophy.
Exactly.
Until the 19th century, science was called natural philosophy. Science was a part of philosophy. Sure, we can use science, we can use things in science like modern cosmology and talk about a closed universe, or a big bang and a singularity, and say these point towards something beyond the universe. But once we go beyond the material universe, we have to enter the field of philosophy. And anyone like AronRa or whoever wants to say, okay, philosophy is a waste of time, they themselves are admitting their ignorance.
Even I mean, even before, like, I'm gonna give you an example, like how philosophy is fundamental even to the science. Let's say we are having the theory of general relativity today. If science would have been enough, we would have had we do have answers that for the gravity, for the universe, starting from a singularity. Right now, I mean, we have that right now. If there was no need of philosophy, we wouldn't investigate further than that, because it is only philosophy that makes us ask questions, that what is it that's happening beyond this singularity. What is it that's happening, what's in the microstructure of the atoms, right, of the things in the universe, right? So it is it's philosophy that's helping us to invest. We wouldn't get to the point where we are right now, right? We would have had, like, at the Aristotelian time, and that was it. Because it was philosophy that helped us to ask more and more questions about nature, about these regularities in nature. That is precisely the reason that we have got scientific progress today. And for further progress, we would have to have philosophy, which will compel us to ask further questions about the universe, right? So, I mean, philosophy is just fundamental to everything. Am I correct, Sherry? Hani?
Yeah, sure, I agree with you.
You're muted, Khalil, you're muted.
Okay, thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm skipping ahead a little bit in the video to get to different sections of this, because we got about 10 minutes left before we might go over a little bit, but we're going to start taking calls if people want to call in. So if you're interested in calling in, whether you're an atheist or a theist, or you have questions or anything like that for the panel tonight, I'll be putting the StreamYard link in the chat. You do not have to come on camera if you don't want to, but if you do, more the merrier. More power to you. But we're going to be doing that. I'll be putting, like I said, I'll pin a message with the StreamYard link so you can come on and talk to us if you'd like. And that's an atheist, theist. As long as you are respectful, we will be respectful to you. If you're disrespectful, I'll make you look like a fool and then kick you from the room. But with that being said, let's I'm skipping ahead a little bit to get to some other important parts of the conversation. And then, with the grand finale at the end, to where all of us on the panel, we know what happens. But
Yeah.
wrap the video up with that.
Yeah.
Because I disagree, obviously. But
Okay.
if no one ever
you'd be happy
produced
to
a
show me.
possibility, if no one ever producing a possibility that God exists entails that it is not possible that God exists, if
Which I
that's
wouldn't
your
assume.
view, if that's your view,
That would
do
not
you
assume
have?
that. In fact, I corrected earlier. I said exactly the opposite. I said that just because you don't have a possibility doesn't mean that it's impossible. It just means there's literally no possibility to discuss.
Oh, okay. So you're not a hard atheist in the sense that you say a necessary being does not exist. You're just saying
I'm a
if I
hard
don't-
atheist.
so you're
I'm a
more of
hard
an agnostic.
atheist. No, I'm a hard atheist in the sense that I know that God does not exist in the same way, for the same reasons, and to the same degree that I know that leprechauns don't exist.
But yeah, what's your basis for that? So, for example, when we talk,
No. Can we pause there for a moment? Yeah.
philosophers talk about
Now, here we have to discuss two things here, right? Now, first of all, what a necessary existence means. Yeah, a necessary existence means something that could have not been otherwise. Like, it is impossible for the mind to conceive of it being otherwise, right? Right now, the leprechauns, leprechauns cannot be put in the same list as of necessary being, right? Because I mean, it is possible for leprechauns to have not existed, yeah, or to have been arranged in a different way, right? Right? It is conceivable of it to have been otherwise. So I mean, it's not even a point to make. Or, yeah, Hanif.
Yeah, I agree. I
thought that you were asleep.
This was one of the parts.
No, I'm there.
Okay.
This was one of the parts of the video where at the very beginning, when Aaron claimed to be a hard atheist, he was supposed to provide saying that you're a hard atheist provides a positive claim. That positive claim requires an argument of some sort or evidence of some sort to substantiate your claim. He is now going back and saying that I don't believe in leprechauns because I don't have any evidence of them, so I know that they don't exist, which is bouncing back into an agnostic position. That's not making a positive statement. That's just saying I haven't been provided with evidence, so I'm going to stick in the null hypothesis. The position of the null hypothesis is just stand in disbelief until something else comes along.
Yeah.
That is not a hard atheist.
Yeah, unless I mean, you posit leprechauns as a necessary layer of reality, right? And say that this is what exists necessarily. Yeah, you can't really put it in the same list. Yeah. To say that he doesn't believe in necessary being because he doesn't believe in leprechauns is a category error. Yeah. Yeah.
Anything, Hanif?
No, I think we've covered it.
There's the famous saying, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, and that, of course, needs to be qualified. So philosophers normally say that they speak about this, and they say that evidence of absence is absence of evidence is evidence of absence in a situation where the being that you're positing would actually leave what you would actually expect for it to leave evidence that you did not find when you're investigating it. So if you posit that a leprechaun exists, or if you say that like Bigfoot exists or whatever, we can expect a certain type of evidence that we can verify, through which we can verify the existence of such a being. But right now you're saying, I don't believe that leprechauns exist because I expect a certain set of data or evidence. If it were to exist, I would expect that kind of evidence that would verify its existence. Now, in the case of the existence of God, what is that evidence that you haven't found that makes you come to the same conclusion that we found?
Okay, those are different topics. First of all, you would expect to find evidence of Bigfoot, and we would have found it by now if there was such a thing. And leprechauns, on the other hand, are entirely supernatural. like God, they are entirely supernatural. They leave no trace of themselves, even when they supposedly do something. So people will attribute everything that happened to God, even when there's a natural explanation for it. They don't care. They know that there's a natural explanation, and they'll just pretend that God orchestrated that natural explanation. So natural explanations still become explanations of God, and then they'll pretend things.
Yeah, but that's sorry, Aaron. That's precisely the point. So Bigfoot, there would be evidence. We don't have the evidence. Bigfoot doesn't exist. Leprechauns wouldn't leave evidence behind. Therefore, what a lot of people say is that in this case, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, because there is no predicted set of there's not a predicted set of data that you would expect as evidence were a leprechaun to exist. So right now I'm saying, what is this evidence that you would expect to exist if God existed, and basically that we don't have access to, so that justifies you in concluding that God does not exist?
Again, referring to leprechauns, you're looking for a way to disprove leprechauns, and the point that you're missing is that there's no reason to believe leprechauns.
That's two separate issues, though. There's two separate issues, Aaron. One is,
you need to have a reason to believe something.
Yeah, that's right. You need to have a reason to believe something. That's one thing. The second thing is having an understanding that something is impossible. Those are two separate issues.
Okay.
Now, what Abdul is explaining, he's saying that, look, if you just have an absence of evidence of X, it doesn't mean that X doesn't exist. So if I turn around and I say X does not exist, it means that I'm making a positive claim. Now, what Abdul said, he said that to make that positive claim that X does not exist, one of the ways would be to say, well, if X existed, I would see this evidence. If this evidence doesn't exist, therefore, that justifies me saying that X does not exist. So he's asking the same question, because you're in a position where you made a hard atheist claim that God does not exist.
What was my hard atheist claim?
So the hard atheism, that God does not exist. That is your position. Not that I don't believe in God because of lack of evidence, a soft atheist claim, but it's a hard atheist claim. So what Abdul is asking is a very specific question. He's saying, look, if you're making this claim that God does not exist, X does not exist, you have to either demonstrate that if God existed or X existed, we would see this evidence. Because we don't see this evidence, then I can discount God. So you have to say, you have to explain what Abdul's specific question was. You have to explain what that evidence is that we would expect, such that it doesn't exist, leading us to the conclusion that God doesn't exist.
Oh, I feel like repeating myself an awful lot. You're asking questions I've already answered, but we don't have a possibility. We start with that. And it's not just that we don't have a possibility. It's just things are defined in reverse. I mean, you want to imagine that somehow the mind exists outside of the brain. There's no support for mind-body dualism whatsoever.
If you wait, pause there, please. Pause there.
Exists matter, and
if you pause there. Okay, I think what's going to happen now is there's going to be a slight there's going to be a long diversion where Aaron goes off onto sidetracks the discussion onto the mind-body problem, okay, which is a different topic. But I wanted to just quick point, because I know we want to get through the video. He said there is no possibility. He said the phrase twice. There is no possibility. Now, presumably, he means there's no possibility of a necessary being, which is the topic of the conversation. But to say there is no possibility for something, what you have to demonstrate that thing that you say is impossible, you have to demonstrate that it's logically incoherent. You have to present an argument to show that the concept of a necessary being is logically incoherent or logically contradictory. Same thing. He doesn't do that.
Yeah,
he
that's
just
what
makes a claim.
No,
I
think it part of this part of this conversation, I may have already skipped over it, but they push him again, and that's why he says he's repeating himself. But they pushed him on this and pushed against his going from hard atheist claim to not being able to substantiate without just being agnostic. Aaron actually says he knows that God does not exist because God would not tell him to cut the tip of his penis off. That's his hard atheist argument against the impossibility of God's existence, is that God wouldn't tell him to cast
okay,
air.
So let's be charitable and think, okay, he's being facetious and silly, and he's trying to have a dig at Muslims and Jews and circumcision. But the point is, but the wider point, the more detailed point is here. He's now bringing in notions of morality and what is objectively right and wrong, and whether does he have an objective morality by which he can assess whether, if there was a God, that God would not want to have the tips of male penises cut off. See, what basis can he say that? It's just basically what he's coming out with is sheer emotivism.
What's happening is, like, under his world, it's like, some atoms are being, taken away, from a particular composition, right? So if he cuts his tip, then that only means that some atoms are being removed from a particular composition, So that's kind of it, right? So these are just ridiculous arguments, man. He would have to understand, like, he would have to know what atheism or what materialism entails, to make these objective, big claims about religious morality.
Yeah.
This is the point, isn't it? Like, what is atheistic sort of material worldview? It's all about matter, sort of about, arranging in a complex manner, right? And then you go human being. So even if you cut it off, all you're doing is you're just taking away, removing some material atoms, which were arranged in a particular way. That's all you're doing, if under atheistic materialistic moral standpoint.
All right, let's get back to it. Like I said, if you guys want to see the full video, visit the Thought Adventure podcast. All of their stuff is in the description below, to their channel and their Twitter and everything. Go to show them some support if you haven't already. If you like this show, you most definitely love the Tap Show. All of us are pretty close. Brother Hanif and Brother Yunus we speak every single day in Facebook groups with Abdul Rahman, Brother Sharif, and Jake the Muslim Metaphysician, and a few others. Hatim, he's been on here before. Moel, he's been on before. We speak with each other just about every single day on these subjects. So if you like this show, you'll definitely like the Tap Show, because we're basically a close knit family now that I've jumped on the boat with the Muslim brothers. So let's go ahead and get closer towards the end, because you guys aren't going to want to miss this. Atheists, listen carefully, because in the Facebook groups you were telling me that I was lying, and that what I claimed that Aaron said he would never, ever, ever say. So please keep your ears peeled, keep your eyes peeled to the screen, so you can have your mind blown.
Understand and interpret those observations. So whether it is dark matter or this new fundamental theory of particle physics that explains why the orbits of the rotations of stars around galaxies, the speed that they're at, whatever it is, what we're saying is that on the fundamental layer of these observations is an explanation that causes it to be the way it is. And therefore, as human beings or scientists, we try to seek out an underlying explanation. So I'm saying is that you have observations here, you have logical axioms as well, and you bring them both together in order to interpret the data. So in this situation, this example, what you're using is something called the principle of sufficient reason. You're looking at reasons behind our observations as a presupposition or an axiom or logical axiom to interpret data. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Do you agree with that?
Yes.
So if you agree upon that, then the next question becomes, okay, it's not.
You see Sharif laughing here. I like this moment.
Yeah.
Because to me, it was like
he knew that he just put Aaron in a corner. Aaron just conceded to the PSR, the principle of sufficient reason, which states that everything that exists has an
underlying explanation. Yeah.
Yes, it has an explanation. So that means that there could never be nothing. That takes away the ability that the universe just started to exist out of nowhere.
If we were to put it in a scientific terms, because atheists love science, even we love science. It's only like PSR is like, we go out there in nature. What do we like? What is our motive to investigate? We're just trying to find out like why is it that something happens in a particular way, and how does it happen? It's like it's already assuming PSR, because we are assuming at the back of our mind that whatever exists, in whatever pattern it exists, right? It has certain explanation, right? And then we go out and do science and find out what that explanation is. In the same manner, we have quantum mechanics, yeah. We go the micro universe, yeah. What do we do when we study quantum mechanics? We already assume, yeah, that there must be existing some explanation, yeah, which we may find out after doing the right calculations, yeah, putting in the right equations, yeah, and finding out what that ultimate explanation is. So science has the principle of sufficient reason at its back, yeah, which kind of pushes it to investigate what is out there in the nature. So it's not like a philosophical principle. I mean, for you to be a scientist, you would have to, accept PSR to find the explanation for the patterns and regularities that exist in nature, right? So yeah, that's what Sharif is asking, AronRa.
Yeah. Good comment here in the chat. Even if you grant the first cause or the necessary being, it doesn't mean that the necessary thing is God. It could also be explained equally by an unknown natural thing. I agree. You could say that at this point in the conversation, you could say that, and that's what they were trying to allude to with Aaron, is that, hey, things like reality or matter and energy, you could at this point in time posit those things as the fundamental causal principle of the universe. They would knock it down later, but at this point in the conversation, you could say that. But the thing is to point out is what myself and the other brothers had said at the very beginning of this, was that AronRa said there is no such thing as a necessary being. He said those specific words explicitly. If you're an atheist and don't believe me, rewind it. You'll hear it straight from Aaron's mouth, that he said there is no such thing as a necessary being.
Yeah.
Just scientific data that we're looking at. Yeah, it's not just empiricism. There's something that's more fundamental than empiricism. There are logical axioms, which is where we get into philosophy now. Yeah, so there's philosophy out there, and this is one of those logical axioms is this thing called the PSR, the principle of sufficient reason, which states that any observations that we have within this universe requires an explanation for why it is the way it is. So the question then becomes: is what is it that we seek an explanation in? Yeah, why do we seek that explanation? For example, if I had a red triangle, I would seek an explanation why it's red, but I wouldn't seek an explanation as to why it's got 3 sides. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay. 3 sides.
Oh my God.
The definition of a triangle, it doesn't have to be red.
Object can be triangular, in which case I'm going to want to know why that thing has 3 sides.
No, I think Sharif is talking about stuff that are analytically true, in the sense that something is true by definition. So if a triangle is by definition has 3 sides, then you're not going to seek an explanation for why a triangle has 3 sides. I mean, it's just the explanation is within the definition, right? It's analytically true.
Yeah, in this last 8 minutes now, I'd love to hear why you guys believe, because nothing.
Can we pause there for a moment? Hanif, would you like to extend it a bit? Like, what does it mean for a triangle to have necessary 3 angles?
Well, Sharif is trying to say that we can say things about triangle. We can know the truth of. We can know some facts about triangles without ever having looked at a single triangle. And one of those facts is that they are 3-sided, or that the sum of the interior angles is 180 degrees. That knowledge is derived without ever looking at any single triangle in the real world, but just from applying logical principles. You start off with axioms from Euclid. What is a point? What is a straight line? You define these terms, and from the definition of triangle, you come to know with certainty that a triangle has 3 sides. But then Sharif said, okay, but the redness of the triangle we would have to investigate.
Accidental property.
Yeah, it's an accidental property. It's an accidental property. You'd have to investigate it empirically in the real world. Aaron completely ignores that and goes back to talking about the essential properties of a triangle, which no one is debating. He doesn't understand the argument and the example that Sharif is bringing forward, which shows my basic problem with Aaron is that this seems to be something. Oh, I've been asked to come on this show. He seems bored, as if he's not engaged, and he's giving pat answers. He's not engaged with what the brothers are trying to say to him. I think later on he wakes up. Later on he wakes up and realizes he has to engage, and he actually comes out with some meaningful statements, which we want to hold him to, and ask him to expand upon later on in another show, maybe.
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah. All right, we're getting to the finale here.
Yeah.
Is the reason you believe? And you almost,
well,
so
first thing,
tell me what makes you believe? Why would you want to?
Yeah. So first thing that we've established is that you can't be really a hard atheist.
No, we have not established that.
To say that. The second thing that I think we've also established is that it's not just empiricism that's sufficient for us to come to certain conclusions. We also need logical axioms and principles.
First thing. So the first thing you've actually established, because the first thing you said you established, you hadn't established.
Okay, but at least you accept that you need logical axioms. You need philosophy. The reliability of the data is only going to be reliable based upon the logical axioms that you have. Like, for example, the principle of sufficient.
Can we pause there for a moment? I just want to make a quick comment.
Philosophy was taught in high school, though.
Go ahead.
Look, I mean, I just want to say this, like, you know, in philosophy of science, I've read it, like, I've learned it long ago now. Now, there are two different types of science. Yeah, one science is an empirical part of science. Yeah, like that which you could verify empirically. The other science is the formal part of science. Yeah. Empirical part of science have all the potential to undergo change in the future, right? Like how science behaves and how we got to this point, yeah, and how in the future it may change. Yeah? This is the statement which atheists often use, that like, science is flexible, science isn't constant like the religion. Yes, science is flexible because it doesn't produce the absolute knowledge. Yeah, it is like I mean, to my opinion, it's the most unreliable source of, I mean, acquiring the truth. The truth, what I mean by truth is the capital T with the capital T, right? And then we go the formal side of the science, and that side is known as, I mean, the logic, the laws of mathematics, right? Now, these principles, this part of science, which we know as formal science, is gonna, be absolute science. It's not gonna change. You could never in the future have arrive at a moment where 2 + 1 = 5, right? Now 2 + 1 would equal 3 in every possible world, right? And that part of science is the necessary science, or like the absolute science, if I would want to put it in that way, right? So I mean, science is not just the empirical, right? In philosophy of science, we go another part of science which is like formal science. Yeah, I just wanted to like say this because we're heading towards the end, and this was very important.
Okay, cool, yeah.
You control how that is taught because it is so grossly misused by religious apologists.
Yeah, so that's one thing that we've established. The second thing that I think is important to establish as well is this idea, or third thing, if you want to say, or second thing, the principle of sufficient reason, that things that we observe within the universe have an explanation for why they exist, because we dismiss this idea of magic. Yeah, so we dismiss, for example, if I turn around and I say something that begins to exist has no cause for its beginning, we dismiss that because that violates the principle of sufficient reasoning, and that then starts to adhere to this idea of magic, which we said.
Yeah,
I agree with you on that. So the next point, I think, and this is where the argument is building up, the next point is, on what basis do we apply the principle of sufficient reasoning? And I'm saying, when we look at things which are possible in a possible state, but they're actualized. So let's say there's an actualized possibility. as an example, you have a red triangle. It could have been a green triangle. It could have been a blue triangle. Yeah, because it's red in particular, I'm going to ask the question, why is it red as opposed to any other color? I'm not going to ask the question, why has it got three sides? Because that's, as Abdul said, it's an analytic proposition. It is where the predicate is contained within the subject. Yeah, meaning its definition is by definition three sides. But
that would be science. Yeah, when he'll question the color of the triangle, yeah, and try to find out the reason why it is green and why not any other color, is that would be science. Yeah, in the same manner, and we have the empirical world, right? External empirical world out there, right? And when we try to investigate about its nature and about its working or its behavior, right? And that is, I forgot, I lost the line of thought. So yeah, that would be science then, right? That is something then we're gonna do, like in the same way, but we're not gonna question the internal angles of the triangle, right?
Yeah.
Because that is necessary. So yeah, I just want to point it out.
Gotcha. I haven't already skipped over the finale, have I? I think that's still coming up, right?
No, that's coming up. It's the last part.
That's where I'm going to look for an explanation, and that explanation is going to be outside of the triangle or the existence of the triangle. Do you agree? And that's how science generally works. Science looks at things which are possible existences that exist, and it tries to understand why, using this principle of sufficient reason, why it exists, and it looks for an explanation outside of the thing itself.
Can you pause there?
What I get from any is the excuse.
Yeah. So like I said, like the example of triangle, we go like the internal angles of a triangle, yeah, and that is necessary, and then we can try to figure out its properties or its color, and that would be the scientific part. In the same way that we have got the laws of rationality, right? And that's basic, that's fundamental, which is necessary to do any kind of science. And once we have that, once we accept that, and then we go out there and try to figure out or try to investigate the empirical behavior or the structure of the world, right? So these are two different things and fall in two different epistemologies. Sherry, Hani, if you wanna say something here?
No, I think that point's been made. There's necessary knowledge that you can derive analytically, i.e., by definition. So we know we can work out the sum of the internal angles of a triangle just by the definition of what a triangle is. But if we want to know anything else, we have to do investigation. So yeah, I accept that. I agree with that. Let's move on.
That anything is possible, and I know of many things, and I could list many things that are not possible. So can we agree that we cannot say that anything is possible?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, good.
So what I would do is
you said, and you agree with what I said. So there we go.
Yeah. So what I would do is I'd list propositions into three general categories. Yeah. One is called logical necessity. Second one is logical possibility, and the third one is a logical impossibility. Yeah. A squared circle would be a logical impossibility. Yeah. A logical possibility is what we do in science. We look for things which are logically possible, and we investigate the way that they are and why they're the way that they are. Yeah. So when we look at an observation within the universe, and we're saying, well, it requires an explanation, the explanation is not contained within itself; it's rather contained outside of itself. Yeah. Then we're looking for the explanation other than the thing itself. Yeah. Now, this is going to lead to certain consequences. One of those consequences is if the explanation itself for this contingent being, so a contingent being basically means something that's possible, is another contingent being, then we need an explanation for that. And then you fall into a potential infinite regress. Do you affirm an infinite regress? Because I say that's a logical impossibility.
I don't know. I'm trying to think, because what very often comes up is arguments of cosmology, which is another topic that I don't even discuss. I don't have any serious objections to it, other than I don't think that it's well thought out or well analyzed. Well, maybe it is well thought out given the data that we have, but we don't have a whole lot of data about it. And what we're talking about is what we've learned in the last century, and most of what we've learned only in the last half of that.
I
think of
understand
it this way.
I understand what you're saying, Aaron. But the issue is this: is that it's not about the particular model. Like, for example, the rotation of stars in galaxies. It's not about whether we have to change the theory of gravity, whether it's dark matter, whether it's this new particle that's in existence that explains why it is. What we're doing is we're seeing an observation. We're saying there is an explanation. There is an explanation, for it. Now, what that particular explanation is, we'd have to investigate further. But what I'm saying is that if we accept that as a principle, then if we're saying these things which are possibilities, i.e. contingent beings, require an explanation. Now, either the explanation is going to be upon another thing which is contingent, which then requires another explanation, or it's going to be upon an explanation that's founded upon something that's necessary, which means that it doesn't require any further explanation.
Can we pause there for a moment?
Yeah.
So what Brother Sharif is saying, that you have got two options here. You either go with the infinite regress, like the infinite chain of events, infinite causal network, right? Or you stop at a point where you say, no, we don't need to go an extra step, or we don't need to go further. We're gonna stop here, and that is unnecessary. The first is logical impossibility, because you can't have a finite sort of existence from an infinite causal network, right? So since you have it, then you would have to have something existing necessarily, which gave rise to this causal principle. So, Hanif, you want to say something here?
What I'd say is, okay, there's debate. Ultimately, the debate comes down to 2 points. I think no intelligent atheist says that the universe, for instance, originated from non-existence, absolute non-existence. Okay, it popped into existence from nothing. So the debate resolves down to 2 things. Either there's some sort of infinite regress of explanations for the universe, or there's a brute fact, and that brute fact is some necessary thing. Let's say thing rather than being, or some necessary existent. Now, there's a debate over whether you can have a logically, whether an infinite regress is logically possible or not. Okay, I believe it's impossible. Whether it's a temporal regress or whether it's a hierarchical regress, ignoring the notion of time. I think, but the question is moot, because I think later on, Aaron himself agrees that an infinite regress is logically impossible. He himself, in a moment, I think will say that he himself agrees that it's impossible, which to my mind means he's accepting the point of the argument that if a logical regress is not possible, then the only thing left, because it's an absolute disjunction, is that there must be some necessary fact or existent or being as an explanation. But we'll get there. If we go down the line of trying to prove or disprove the impossibility of an infinite regress, we have to go into ideas like Hilbert's hotel, or the impossibility of transversing an infinite past by successive addition. Those arguments, but it will take us longer than we need in this specific.
Or like the simple example I often give about infinite regress is like, let's say I'm a person sitting here asking, let's say a football, asking other person to pass me a football, right? And before he passes the football to me, he would have to ask permission from other guy, right? And that guy, like, if he could pass the football, right? And that guy have to ask permission from other guy. Now, if this chain of asking permission went for infinitum, right? The football could never be passed to me. In order for football to be passed to me, one have to, stand up on its own, to give the permission, and then and only then the football would, reach to me. Otherwise, it's impossible. It's logically impossible for the football to reach to me if there was this infinite, permission seeking going on, right? So one on its own. Yeah, go on.
All right, I don't want to digress too far into this infinite regress thing, because I think I might be mistaken, but I think Aaron does concede it. But even if we discount philosophical arguments for the impossibility of infinite regress, the current cosmological models themselves, posit a finite beginning to the universe. Okay, they all posit a singularity. There've been attempts to come up with models that might have a cyclical universe or a multiverse, but all these models are simply mathematical theories. They don't actually map onto reality. And there's a cosmologist, I think his name was Vilenkin, Alan Guth. There's the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem, which I read a paper on it by Vilenkin, where he said that any universe which has experienced expansion must have a finite beginning in the past. And he disproved with it. He disproved, as far as I remember, the idea of a cyclic universe, or a cyclic universe going infinite in the past, and it may or may not have relate to a multiverse. But he said in the paper that the same thing could apply to a multiverse within an eternal inflation model. So the current cosmology backs the idea that the universe has a finite beginning in the past.
So I want to wrap things up and just say this, but there was I have a message up here from Mo. He says infinite regress is not a logical impossibility. There's no logical contradiction in having infinite regress and thus it being a logical possibility. So Mo, with that claim that it could be a logical possibility, I would like you to show me that if we have this moment right now and there is an infinite amount of causes and effects that preceded this moment right now, I would like you to tell me how many causes and effects it would take and an infinite amount of causes and effects to get to right now. It's almost as if you took the number 10 and divided it by 2. You get 5. You divide that by 2. You get 2.5. You keep doing that over and over again. You will keep dividing by 2 an infinite amount of times. You will never, ever get to 0. This moment right now would be 0, and those preceding causes and effects would be the times that you divide by 2. You would never, ever get to this moment right now. So with you saying that it is a logical possibility and presenting that claim, I would like you to demonstrate with argumentation or whatever you have to possibly show me that the universe could be infinite.
To have a temporal effect, it's impossible for there being an infinite regress, because how could you have a temporal effect if there is this infinite regress going on?
We got Brother Hot Time with us. He'll join the panel tonight.
Salam alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Hey, I can't actually stay for long, but I wanted to comment because there's a lot of debate going on in the comments about the infinite regress of it seems like the universe or contingent beings and all that. But
sorry, go
there's
ahead.
So there's actually something that Abdurrahman he mentioned in the debate with AronRa, that it's actually irrelevant if you say there's an infinite amount of contingent beings or that they're finite, because the set of all contingent beings.
If anybody wants me to dig up an argument.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh no, I was just saying that if you were to say that the set of all contingent things, if it is
Craig, his success.
And if it was necessary, then there you go. You'd have a necessary being there. So it's it's really irrelevant whether we say that it's an infinite regress or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've heard Graham Opie saying the same thing, and he said he wants.
Because a lot of people don't understand that the contingency argument has different. It's more like a modal argument. It's not like a causal argument like the KCA is, like the Kalam cosmological argument is. So it's just important to keep in mind, because there's a lot of people like talking in the comments about infinite regress not being impossible and all this, but all that stuff is irrelevant. It's kind of a moot point with regards to the video. So I just wanted to point that out. Sorry, guys.
Okay, cool.
No,
cool.
it's okay. It's good. Stay here.
Okay, three-sided triangle. You don't ask the question why it's three sides.
All right, you've got 2 minutes left, and I apologize.
That's where he says, oh crap, they've already cornered me. I'm going to put a time limit on this thing.
Gone anywhere with this at all?
I mean, Aaron, what are you saying? You're leaving?
It's been an hour.
Oh, okay.
I like the smile of Brother Abdul Rahman.
I'll just.
So it's sad that you have to leave. Maybe you can consider staying. I think the gist of what Sharif is saying, after you've committed to a principle of reason, you've accepted that everything has an explanation, and Sharif explained what contingent things are and how they have explanations external to themselves. You also accept logic. So a logical entailment of that is everything in existence, everything that is contingent in existence has some explanation beyond it, and that explanation that is beyond it, by definition and by logical entailment, can't be contingent itself because it's already an explanation of all contingent things. And by that, using logic, reason, and even empirical reality, because we observe contingent things, we've established the existence of a necessary being. Now, what do you have to say about that?
I like how philosophers try to define their God into existence.
But Aaron, you agreed with every step that leads to the conclusion I've just provided. You agreed with the use of logic. You agreed that everything has an explanation, and you committed to a PSR, and you definitely a principle of sufficient reason that every contingent thing has an explanation. So you agree with every step of the chain, but then you throw the whole chain out altogether once it's done said.
When you get up to the point where you're supposed to provide that sufficient reason, and then you don't, you simply jump to your conclusion without.
Okay, so tell me where the problem is. There are contingent things in the world. You accepted that contingent things require explanations external to themselves. I even saw one of the definitions you put on your website kind of indicates that you commit to a sort of principle of sufficient reason. And when we take everything that exists that is contingent, the set of all existent things that is contingent, whether it is finite or infinite, doesn't matter. So the set of contingent things that has an explanation beyond it. So if we can conclude that the set of contingent things is contingent, of course, we can argue for that. But just if that is assumed and it has an explanation external to itself. Sorry,
you threw all of that out and jumped to Magic Invisible Man.
No, see what we're discussing right now, Aaron. I don't want you to change definitions here. The reason we've made this discussion about a necessary being is because it kind of streamlines the discussion. We're not concerned with all the other properties. We can have a different stream where we discuss the other properties that we say God has. But in order to get somewhere, we have to kind of streamline the discussion and not keep jumping around to different places when we actually make some progress. So right now, everything in existence that is contingent, by your admission and by your concession, requires an explanation external to itself, because you've already said that everything requires an explanation. So if we can establish that a multiplicity of contingent things doesn't make it necessary, like, for example, my laptop requires an explanation, 100 laptops requires an explanation, an infinite number of laptops also requires an explanation, and we take the set of all contingent things in existence and we say that it requires an explanation external to itself, by definition, that explanation cannot be contingent, because we've already said that it explains all contingent things. Then we've established.
I think that's what.
Right now we're talking about a necessary being.
I think that's what Hatim meant, by like, even if there is an infinite set of contingent existence, it would still require an explanation external to itself, and that would indicate some sort of necessity.
I think the bombshell's coming up here soon, and I'll play it like maybe 2 or 3 times just so the atheist can get it in one ear and out the other.
Hold on a second. We didn't get there yet, Aaron. We're just trying to figure out if we even agree on there being a necessary being, and then we could.
There's lots we could.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, if we come to an agreement that there's a necessary being, doesn't necessitate that it's God, but then, as you said, maybe in the future,
there's a necessary being.
What's that?
Less that it's God. So we have to get to that first assumption, which we haven't gotten to, and then that it is God, which we're not going to get.
Okay,
to.
But Aaron, can you explain which part?
Hold on, Abdul, please. So what I'm saying, Aaron, is that we were trying to build an argument for the necessary being. You agree to the principle of sufficient reason, so we're on the same page there. Then what we're trying to explain is we have all these different things that we experience in reality that are contingent, that require an explanation for them outside of themselves. And so the question is, do we get to a bedrock thing that is necessary that explains all these other contingent facts, or do we just keep going on ad infinitum with all these different contingent beings? The only two really possible options at this point is to say, well, there has to be some sort of necessary being that is the grounds and explains all these other contingent facts, or we just keep adding on more and more contingent facts ad infinitum, and we don't really get anywhere. So
matter and energy are eternal, never created, and then we don't have this problem at all.
But then you would say that matter and energy in that case would be necessary, and then you have a necessary being. It just happens to be matter and energy, right?
The reason being that it's not possible for there to be absolutely nothing.
Well, but I'm saying,
yeah. So exactly,
if you reject infinite regress and you said, well, the thing that's eternal is this matter and energy. Well, the question is that matter and energy that's eternal, is it necessary or is it a contingent fact? If you say that it's contingent, then it needs an explanation outside of itself. Or if you say that it's necessary, then you agree with us that there is something that is necessary. You just think that it's matter and energy. And then we could have a discussion about that.
Okay.
So, I mean, which one of those options would you, at this point, would you go with? Would you say that you think matter and energy is eternal but doesn't have to be necessary, and then we still have to figure out, well, what
if it's necessary, the only thing that makes it necessary is that it's not possible for there to be absolutely nothing. At least I don't think it's possible for there to be absolutely nothing, and that impossibility would make the existence of something necessary. And
right. Okay.
None of it is relevant to what we're talking about.
So he admitted here. So I mean, he kind of admitted that there is a necessary layer of reality, right? To, I mean, in order to avoid infinite regress, there must be a fundamental necessary layer of reality. And now it depends, like, you know, for him what that is or what that could be, but he kind of admits here explicitly and says that, yes, I mean, in order to avoid nothingness, yeah, or absolute nothingness to be there must be something necessary out there. So it's kind of conceding to the point, to the entire argument that these brothers were trying to make, yeah. And yeah, I mean he kind of lost the discussion or debate, if you want to call it, in the very beginning, but here he is, like, you know, outright, explicitly, openly, whatever you want to call it, admitting that necessary existence exists.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to point this out because this is one. What's up? What's up, Andy?
What I'd like is this. I would like just us to rewind a bit to the beginning of when he starts speaking, and then to the end of when he finishes, so we get the whole of his idea in one go. So we're not misrepresenting what he's saying.
Yeah,
and then we can
that's
speak
a fantastic idea.
Okay, and then we'll bring on some callers. I think we have an atheist that's coming on, and then we have a couple of other people that I know that are theists. So let's try and get to all of them too. But yeah, I'll just rewind it a little bit.